I'm Josh Singleton, and this is Below the Scope.
You burst alive, and suddenly you're falling. In your first waking moments of life, your entire body has compelled you to leap from the sky down to the cold, hard ground. You slam into the dirt with a soft thud, and then your body compels you again. Dig.
You begin to claw into the earth and into darkness, away from the world that you have only known for a matter of seconds. And now, you'll spend the next 17 years beneath the surface waiting, with millions of other cicadas just like you. Above you, many cower in fear of your invasion, and others wait in awe. However, what really goes on in the darkness beneath the surface, and what happens when you reemerge? It's an answer for those ready to bury themselves below the scope.
They don't crawl down the tree. They do a kamikaze drop to the ground, and as soon as they hit the ground, they've got very little time to get below the surface.
This is Dr. Gene Kritsky.
But I've watched this. I've taken these nymphs that I've harvested that were an hour old.
He's an emeritus, or a distinguished but retired professor of biology at Mount St. Joseph University, and the chief science officer for the Center for IT Engagement.
And I've dumped it at the base of a maple tree to see how fast, what happens. Within 30 seconds, most of them, at least 50%, are gone. And what they've done is they found that connection where a blade of grass is connected with the soil. That little space there is enough for them to get actually down underground. And within a minute, they were all gone.
The surface is a minefield of dangers. Birds can swoop in and carry you off. Beneath a fallen leaf could be a wolf spider 100 times your size.
You, the cicada, quickly need to descend down a blade of grass into the soil using big, powerful legs. The late summer sun fades behind you as you crawl deeper, but you don't go too deep. Your first year, you only go about 1 to 2 inches below the surface.
And now, you have to find food, praying it's something that can be eaten with your proboscis. It's essentially your mouth, but it works more like a straw.
They can actually puncture through the plant tissue and get moisture that way. And so they're feeding on the xylem, which is a nutrient for.
And 17-year cicadas, and the other periodical cicadas, rarely leave the trees they were hatched from.
Unless you're in a forest or somewhere with extensive interlocking root systems, you are trapped for nearly 2 decades as you roll the dice on where you'll get your meals, unsure whether or not this tree will be a sustainable food source.
Nevertheless, it'd be better than becoming lunch.
And it makes sense when you think of it. My name is PJ Liesch.
He's an entomologist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and runs the UW Insect Diagnostic Lab.
If you're talking about periodical cicadas, they need a food source that is going to be there for the long haul, 13 or 17 years. And so if you just decide one day, hey, I'm going to wander off and tunnel in this direction, you might not hit a tree. You could be in an open park or cemetery or something like that, and it could be a long ways to the next tree, and that would basically doom you.
About 99% of your life is this: tunneling and feeding on roots. And this has its own dangers, as soils are full of life from animals to insects, or even tiny organisms that will gladly eat you without blinking an eye. But without food and a little bit of luck, you won't develop properly. You continue to struggle for nourishment in the name of instinct.
But the first stage only lasts anywhere from like 2 months up to, say, 9 to 11 months.
This is Dr. Chris Simon.
I'm a senior research scientist at the University of Connecticut in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. The 17-year cicadas have, the first instar is 1 year, and you can think of it as 1 year, although it's variable. And then the second, third, and fourth, and fifth instars, they all have an average length of 4 years. But some are healthier than others, some have better genotypes than others, some have better feeding sites than others. So in each of those instars, some of them are growing faster and switching to the next instar before the others.
When cicada nymphs switch to the next stage, it means they've outgrown their previous exoskeletons, and they begin to molt.
The outermost tissue of their exoskeletons pulls apart from the rest of their bodies. Then, they crack open the exoskeleton to begin their next stage of development.
So once they get to the last stage or instar, the fifth one, then they're getting ready to turn into adults, but it takes a while. They have to develop their ovaries and their wings and wing buds and all that kind of stuff.
But unlike the other stages, they don't molt underground in the last stage. This is when they prepare to return to the surface.
So in the fifth instar, they're developing, and at a certain point, they're ready to come out, but it might not be the 13th year or the 17th year, so they just wait. So the really interesting thing is they have these 4-year windows. Once they get to the fifth instar, there's these 4-year windows. So if they're ready in the year 13 and they're a 17-year cicada, they'll come out in year 13. If they're not ready, they'll stay in the fifth instar and they'll come out in year 17. And if it's been really cold and they're not ready, the whole time it's been really cold, like during the ice ages, they're not ready, then they'll come out in the 21st year. So there's like these 4-year windows. And when you go down and look at the 13-year cicadas, we've gone down, and my postdoc and my technician went down, looked specifically for them coming out 4 years early, and they do that as well. So they come out in 9 years if they're ready.
Soon you will emerge with your brethren. This complicated behavior seems to be a way for these nymphs to develop and avoid most predators.
What's interesting to me, though, is some of the strategies that have been discussed and kind of put out there as possible explanation for like periodical cicada behavior. And really, two things stand out to me. These irregular time intervals, 13 or 17 years, and these are relatively large numbers as far as insects go. I mean, a lot of insects have pretty short lifespan. Think of a fruit fly. That could be a matter of a week or two. So insects that are living that long, that's really pretty unique. But also these large prime numbers, that's hard for potential predators to catch on to.
Prime numbers are those that can't be multiplied besides by 1 in itself.
What I'm getting at there is, let's say you are periodical cicadas or cicadas in general, and you came out in huge numbers every single year or maybe every other year. We've got some vertebrate predators that can live for a couple years, and eventually those predators may catch on to this and realize there's a big resource, food for us every year, every other year. Their populations would probably increase accordingly.
It may not be clear how cicadas know to come out at the same time, but it seems to be related to ground temperature.
They'll actually make these tunnels that go up to the surface of the soil.
In a lot of places, they'll make their holes to the surface before they come out. And you can see them sitting down in the holes there if the holes are out in the open. So they'll just be waiting for the right temperature.
On the right night, at the right temperature, after more than 17 years, the brood returns. One night, when the ground temperature is just right, after the sun sets behind a silhouette of trees, you and millions of other cicadas erupt from the soil, breaking into the surface world, your tiny but powerful legs pumping as you climb. Your seeming desperation to live the rest of your life to the fullest is commendable. There are about 3,000 species of cicadas around the world. Most of them are annual cicadas. They live on 2 to 5 year life cycles. You can find members of the same species every year. But in the United States, periodical cicadas are unique. You can find them from as far north as Massachusetts to the plains of Texas, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. There are 7 species with different broods or populations, and they come out on 13 or 17 year cycles. But even you, a 17-year cicada, and the millions in your brood don't come out in the same year as another 17-year cicada brood. Your brood has its own timeline, and another brood has its own. Right now is your time, and you are one of the many carpeting the forest floor. millions of six-legged nymphs scurrying around. And you're not done developing yet. To finish and finally become the cicada you were always meant to be, you have to climb and hope that your genetics ensure your success and survival on the surface world.
They're going on to tree trunks, sides of houses, fence posts, other vertical surfaces.
Once situated, you lock your claws into the surface. Then you begin to molt and shed your exoskeleton for the final time. You wriggle back and forward, splitting out your old husk of a body. Wings like stained glass emerge. Those big, large legs you used to dig into the soil are now much smaller. You don't fly away immediately, though.
So once they then start pumping fluid through the wings, that expands the wings. So they took with very tent-like over the abdomen, typical cicada wings. And that process takes about 90 minutes. Once crawling out of the ground, flying, and then getting the out, that's 90 minutes. But they're still all white. They still can't fly. So that takes another 90 minutes, depending on the air temperature, could be a little longer, to harden their exoskeleton, scleritize it, as well as tan it.
The pale white cicada slowly turns black in the darkness.
After about 3 hours or so after they start coming out of the ground, that you now have the typical periodical cicada with the red eyes, the black body, the wings with the orange colored veins, and what have you. But they're still, even though they now are an adult, they can't mate yet. Once that happens, they start crawling up the tree, and they get up in the canopy where they sit and continue to harden their exoskeleton, get their reproductive structures matured. Then they can start singing and flying.
Over the next 4 to 5 days, cicadas fully develop their sexual reproductive parts. Female cicadas develop ovaries, but male cicadas develop something else.
The males, they've essentially evolved to be living musical instruments. Their abdomen, for the most part, is hollow. You got these membranes. There's muscles attached to it, so when you pull those, it causes vibration, and that produces the sound. And they're doing this. They're basically yelling, screaming to attract the females.
The songs of cicadas are so iconic that many of us associate them with the sounds of spring and hot summers. And for the next 4 to 6 weeks, cicada males and females will be trying to find mating partners. But now that your brood of your brothers and sisters has emerged, and with the males not being able to be quiet, the dinner bell has rung. Cicadas don't have stingers, toxins, or strong jaws, so you are essentially defenseless to your surroundings. Everything from fish, insects, reptiles, and mammals eat cicadas, including humans.
And actually, if you go back into some of the oldest written documents related to periodical cicadas in North America, we're talking about first half of the like 1600s. Settlers came from Europe. What are these? Because they only occur in eastern parts of North America. So Europeans had never seen or experienced these before. And yet they saw Native Americans were collecting these, used as a food source, because again, it's a very abundant protein source at the time.
If you're curious, you can find cicada recipes online. Periodical cicadas also don't have natural predators. You may have heard of the cicada killer. They're large wasps, one of the largest in the United States. They focus on annual cicadas, attacking them and bringing them back to their nest for their young. They only attack periodical cicadas, if they happen to look out. Since periodical cicadas emerge with no natural predators, brood populations can grow exponentially. Rarely, different broods of periodical cicadas, one being 13 and the other 17, can emerge at the same time and have partially overlapping geographical areas. This nearly happened in 2024 when 2 separate broods emerged in northern Illinois. However, despite the hype, the 2 broods were miles apart. Because there are only 3 13-year broods, the joint emergence won't happen again until 2037. These 2 broods will be even farther apart. But even during a normal periodical cicada emergence, there are so many cicadas that scientists can see the evidence of the buffet.
In some urban areas where cicadas emerge, they often see a spike in the number of mice and rats in the cities because there's more food. It's prevalent. There was a study done a couple of years ago that found that there was a caterpillar that was a pest on oak trees. But during the brood 10 emergence, those the birds that kept the oak tree caterpillars in checks stopped feeding on the caterpillars, and they started feeding on the cicadas. And so the caterpillars did a lot more damage that year.
In the long run, researchers aren't sure how much damage the caterpillars actually did to these trees, but other research has shown that when periodical cicada brood emerges, local trees grow slower as predators feed on them instead of other pests, which can set the development of a forest back. So, the emergence of a brood can be beneficial for all.
And in local areas, you can get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands just in small areas like an acre or so. And the idea is, and this is part of an evolutionary strategy, there are so many that emerge that yes, plenty of them will be eaten by birds or fish or raccoons or skunks or whatnot. But there's going to be so many overwhelming numbers that many more survive and successfully mate and reproduce. And so that is really an important part of their biology. If they emerged at these long time intervals, but you only got 20 or 40 that popped out, and a lot of those get eaten because you're a male, you're screaming, you're making noise, you're conspicuous to predators, you're probably going to fizzle out in that.
While hundreds of thousands of your brethren become dinner. Enough survive during each emergence to sing and mate, if they can avoid the danger among them. Periodical cicadas don't have a natural predator. However, they do have a natural parasite. It's a fungus called Massopora cicadina, and it only affects 13 or 17-year cicadas. It changes how they look and behave. One of the earliest descriptions of the fungus actually comes from a freeborn black man named Benjamin Banneker, who helped survey what is now Washington, D.C. He wrote in the year 1800, "The hindermost part rots off, and it does not appear to be in any pain to them, for they still continue on singing till they die." He's referring to the spores of the fungus, which causes the abdomen of the cicada to fall off. It then forms a plug of white chalky spores where the abdomen was, but it also affects the behavior of the cicadas.
When the spores infect the periodical cicadas, it doesn't kill them, but what it does is it actually produces and releases some amphetamine-like compounds, and it alters the chemistry of the brain. So these infected cicadas, I mean, they're hopped up on drugs, so to speak.
Scientists believe that these compounds make the cicada hypersexual.
The periodical cicada mating process is quite fascinating. It's only recently been well understood. Initially, just a few were singing, but as over the course of the next week to week and a half, more and more males will be singing, and they gather in the trees that we call chorusing centers. Female cicadas, hearing the chorusing center, will fly into the tree. And of course, wherever you have an aggregation of males, it's called a lek, L-E-K. And so the females fly into this chorusing center, and there are going to be tens of hundreds of cicadas possibly eating that tree. She's going to land and be close to one. If there's a male nearby singing, she will respond by flicking her wings at a specific point in his call. Now, that's a rather interesting time because other males are around, and if they hear a female cicada flick, the next time that first male sings, they will start singing as he's approaching that critical point, so that she doesn't hear the first male, she hears the second male's call and starts responding to him. And as that happens, the male and the females will both walk closer together, and eventually the call will stop having a gap for her to flick her wings, and it'll be a continuous call, and that's when they get really close. And then the male starts tapping around the back with his foreleg, and as physical mating starts to occur, he goes into a third call. For whichever male wasn't successful at attracting a mate, he gets frustrated and flies either to another branch and oftentimes to another tree. And that's when you hear these cicadas call, get this really loud cacophonous chorus. And I've measured as high as 102 decibels.
That's as loud as an average construction site and almost as loud as a nightclub.
And that's enormous. That's louder than jets flying into the Dallas airport. I mean, it's just a and so, but as you listen, it's not a constant. It actually gets really loud and then it drops a little bit, and then loud again and drop. And that time when it decreases in sound, that's when the unsuccessfully mating males fly to other branches.
Male cicadas show a significant difference in behavior if they're infected before the mating process.
These hypersexual cicadas can fly from tree to tree, spreading their spores as they attempt to mate. If the abdomen of a cicada is removed, male cicadas can't sing as well. Instead, they flick their wings like females attracting other male cicadas. However, their wings can become infected from doing so. And as you fly, spores shake off the fungal plug, and if fungus gets lucky, it can infect other cicadas, spreading disease instantly. But this is just stage 1 of the infection. In stage 2, a cicada dies and falls to the ground, where the spores are deposited. But if a female cicada is successfully impregnated by a male, she lays her eggs a few days later.
They'll lay eggs in pencil-sized branches on trees, and they'll lay them in V-shaped nests, and in each side of the V there'll be about 12 eggs, and then those eggs will still take about 6 weeks before they hatch. So they'll be hatching in late summer.
However, female cicadas do this several times, laying over 500 eggs in her life. Some research has suggested that cicada nymphs may become infected with fungal spores as they pass through an infected mother. These spores are possibly laying dormant in the nymphs until they reemerge. Unfortunately, the mother will never see her young. After 4 to 6 weeks, the life cycle is complete. Male cicadas die soon after mating for the final time, and females after laying their final eggs. So, your life as a cicada and your generation's time has ended. Fish, insects, reptiles, birds, and mammals feast on all of your corpses, providing a source of protein for their entire ecosystems. For those of you who aren't eaten, your bodies will decompose in the soil, providing nutrients for plants and other life that live there. Your life has new meaning as you provide from the grave. And when the new generation of nymphs hatch at the end of summer, they dig tunnels, improving air circulation, making it easier for water flow to the roots of trees and plants. The thought of millions of cicadas invading our lives can inspire fear. However, these harmless insects are an important and unique part of the forest of the eastern half of the United States, something you could only appreciate if you're willing to look below the scope. Thanks to our experts Dr. Gene Kritsky, PJ Liesch, and Dr. Chris Simon. This episode was narrated by me, Josh Singleton. It was produced and written by Chad Singleton, myself, and Jordan Chapman. Jordan also edited and fact-checked the episode. SFX and music are from artlist.io. For a full list of SFX music used in this episode, check out the show notes. Below the Scope is a podcast by B-SCI. Partial funding was also provided by the National Association of Science Writers. Thanks for listening to this episode. Please subscribe to know when a new episode drops, and like and leave a comment when you do. And finally, be scientists, until next time.